Okay, so welcome to this interview by the EAHAD Physiotherapy Committee. My name is Magnus Aspdahl. I'm a member of the Physio Committee and I'm a physiotherapist based in Stockholm, Sweden. With us today we have Isolde Kuijlaars. Hello, Isolde.
Hi, Magnus. Thank you for the invitation.
Hi, thank you. So, can you start off by telling us where you work and who you are?
Yes, I am Isolde Kuijlaars. I am 29 years old and I'm a physical therapist in primary care and have a master degree in clinical health sciences. I work on my PhD project at the Van Creveld Clinic in the University Medical Center in Utrecht in the Netherlands. And my main topic, my PhD, is outcome assessment of functions, activities, and participation in haemophilia care.
Okay. So you just got an article published in Haemophilia with the title Evaluating International Haemophilia Joint Health Score Results combined with expert opinion, options for a more convenient Haemophilia Joint Health Score. And this article is now an open access paper from Wiley, and we'll try to add a link to this interview to the article. So can you start off by telling us a little about the background to this project? What were the reasons you got into this, and who came up with the idea?
Mhm. There was signs that the HJHS takes too much time for the clinical setting. HJHS assessment can take up to 45 to 60 minutes. And the developers of the HJHS, the IPSG Expert Working Group on Musculoskeletal Health, also heard these signs. So the idea for the project was initiated by the Expert Working Group during a meeting in 2016, and they called it the HJHS Pooling Initiative with the goal to shorten the HJHS. And Jan-Jaap van der Net is chair of the expert working group, but he is also one of my co-promoters. And as the project was in line with my research topic about outcome assessment, the project became part of my PhD project at the Van Creveld Clinic. So together with my other co-promoter, Katelijn Fischer, and Professor Dr. Brian Feldman from Tickets in Toronto, we worked on the study design and the data collection for the project. And later on, we invited experts from the field to collaborate in the project.
Yeah, well, it's a really massive project with different parts and different approaches to make the Haemophilia Joint Health Score more convenient. Can you please specify the study design and of this project, of your project?
Yeah, we used a blended methodology. First, we analyzed international data from published studies which use the HJHS. And after the statistical analysis, the results of the study were discussed in an international expert meeting last year. And during the meeting, the experts voted about different topics to make the HJHS shorter.
Okay. So why did you choose this study design? Like, for example, why did you include the expert voting and not settle with the?
Yeah, normally in clinometrics, you can compare your outcome with a golden standard. But for the HJHS, we don't have such a golden standard. So therefore, we combine the data with expert opinion. And we believe it is important to reach consensus between the developers of the HJHS and the users and investigators for making such adaptations. And I think it's also very important for the implementation of such adaptations.
Absolutely, I agree. So can you tell us a little about the first section of this study, the cross-sectional multi-center analysis?
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, we performed a literature search to identify the published studies which use the HJHS. And we invited the researchers to share the data with us to create a mix of patients with hemophilia from different countries, different treatment regimens. And finally, we had the data of 7 published studies with 499 HJHS data of patients with hemophilia from 4 to 30 years old. And that's a very large number in the field of hemophilia. And
It sure is.
the data came from Romania, the Netherlands, United Kingdom, Pakistan, Lithuania, Brazil, Canada, and the United States. And we looked in 3 ways in the data to create a short version. First, we determined on item level which items which items were universally important for the different populations. Secondly, we looked in the data on scoring option level. So should we keep all the scoring options for all the items? And finally, we looked in data at joint level. So is it necessary to measure all the joints in all situations?
Okay, interesting. So can you tell us a little about the first part and the process and results from the item reduction?
We did a whole battery of statistical analysis to identify redundant items of the HJHS, but we didn't found any item which could be dropped based on all the analysis. So during the expert meeting, we presented the results, and the experts reached consensus that duration swelling and crepitus were redundant items. For duration swelling, the most important argument was that the reliability was possibly biased by recall bias, as the item is more clinical history than physical examination of the joint. And duration swelling also correlates strong with swelling. There was a correlation of 0.8. For the item crepitus, the most important argument for dropping it was that crepitus is also reported frequently in healthy people. And the experts voted that swelling, extension loss, strength, and global gait were the most important items of the HJHS.
Okay, interesting. So then you looked into, when you were finished with the item reduction, you looked into the scoring reductions. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
To identify which scoring options were used in the dataset, we evaluated the endorsement of all the scoring options for each item. And all items except for duration swelling and global gait, there were scoring options which were scored in less than 5% of the patients. And we discussed this in the expert group, but the experts wouldn't reduce the number of scoring options because this would only result in a minor reduction of duration of HJHS assessment.
Okay. Mm. So the other approach was joint reduction. So can you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, the third way to shorten the HJHS was to look if it was necessary to measure all joints in all kind of situations. So clinical care, research, and we identified which joints were affected in the data set. And we saw that the ankles were the most frequently affected joints, followed by the knees and the elbows. But the experts noticed that the most affected joint is not always the joint which needs the most attention. So during the discussion, the experts suggested that screening of joints instead of a full HJHS assessment could be a way to reduce time of HJHS assessment.
Mm. Oh, that sounds really interesting. So a screening process, so you screen the joints, and those joints that don't pass the screening will be examined by the Haemophilia Joint Health Score. Is that right? Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Yeah. So can you tell us a little about that? If we do that, do you think we will miss early signs of arthropathy, or?
I think the HJHS will miss the very early signs of arthropathy. After a joint bleed, the synovium changes, followed by the cartilage and bone, and the HJHS is not a method to see these changes directly. Ultrasound is a better method to detect these early changes, and I think that the HJHS looks in a more indirect way to these first joint changes.
I totally agree. So to wrap this up, so what are the conclusions of this study you did?
The conclusion of the study was that the items duration, swelling, and habitus were candidates for item reduction. Dropping these two items will lead to a substantial gain in time. So it's relevant to search for further ways to achieve shorter joint assessment in clinical practice, like the screening, which was suggested by the experts. And we saw in the data that the short version of the HJHS was still able to discriminate between patients from different ages and different treatment regimens.
Okay. So with this assessment tool, it's like you said, it's very time consuming, and it doesn't detect the very early changes or the early signs of arthropathy. So do you think that it will be continued to be used in hemophilia care in the future, or will it be obsolete and everybody will use ultrasound?
I believe that the HJHS helps physical therapists to look in a structured way to joints and to score joint status in clinical practice and research. It will help to monitor joint health in clinical care and in research. It will help to compare patients on group level. And on the other hand, we know that the HJHS is not as sensitive as ultrasound, for example, for the detection of early joint damage. So both will be interesting for clinical care, as the HJHS and ultrasound measure other constructs.
I'm glad you said that, because I believe that Haemophilia Joint Health Score is an important tool to use in your clinical setting. So, okay, so this article just got published, so you have left that for now, this project. So what are you working on now? Do you have anything else interesting going on?
Of course. We work on projects to shorten the pediatric hemophilia activities list and the adult version of the hemophilia activities list, the HAL, and to validate the short versions. Both the PET-HAL and HAL are long questionnaires, and in the project we are exploring if there are also or if a shorter version is also a right way. And in addition, we are exploring the possibilities of computer adaptive testing, and that's a new method which could lower the burden of outcome assessment for questionnaires.
Okay, interesting. So thank you so much, Isolde, for joining us here today, and thank you for watching. And make sure to follow the EAHAD Physio Committee's social media, and so you don't miss any updates. And that's great. Wish you all luck and stay safe in this difficult time. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.